Welcome back, Sean here, Mountains Garage, for the third and final installment of the TH400 with the Transbrake. Just about a week start to finish. A good lump of that was waiting for the parts, but the fact that I got them in a week and I finished the transmission today, with everything that's going on right now, not bad. Here we go. I just pushed the piston into the forward clutch. While I'm set up, I'll do the direct clutch and I'll push it out of the way, and I'm going to go back to talking about the forward clutch. So, as usual, I'm all lubed up. The tools are lubed up. And you got two hands. I've done this before with one hand. You can simply twist it right in. And you're done. Just like that. After the pistons are installed, they should spin easy. They should have gone in with no stress. No problem. This piston was cut to 591. It had the Belleville washer and then 5 clutches and steels. So I have a lot of space to take up. It accepted 6 77 thousandths clutches and 6 76 thousandths steels. It doesn't need to be a 6 clutch unit, but if I'm taking up space, that's a good way to do it. For the clutch hub, see if you can guess which one I'm going to use. Stock Turbo 400 4L80E. Much stronger. Stronger than the horsepower that we're dealing with in this case for sure. So I will put the stock springs in all locations in the forward hub, forward drum. The direct clutch gets a set of brand new heavy-duty Transbrake specific return springs. I happen to have a brand new set, so I can continue and finish up the direct drum and the forward drum, even though my Transbrake valve body isn't here yet. The direct drum and forward drum are assembled, ready to go. This is my elaborate clutch soaking machine. It's the tin lid to a candy dish. I got Christmas 1974. I'll pop the clutches out of the direct to lower it in so I can grab right there. Ready to go. Starting assembly of the front pump. These 3 holes face downward in the transmission. If the bushing I'm using has a parting line, I like to put it on the top. This has it looks like a puzzle piece. I put a slight amount of cylindrical part bonding, and I always drive it in with my aluminum driver. You could probably use a steel driver, but I never have. And I just drive it in until the driver pushes it flush. I've already packed the front seal with Vaseline, and I have a steel driver for that. No reason why you couldn't use this one. Just what I do. Despite being super careful with the seals and packing the cavity, I always double check to make sure the spring doesn't fall out that holds the tension on the seal itself. Not much holds it in. I'm good in this case, which is great. The pump gears, you always put a little lube in. The inner gear has to be offset. You can see if I put it in that way or that way. It needs to be away from the torque converter, so dot up. Those are dots on either side. As long as the square part of the gear that engages the torque converter is towards you when you put it in, you're right. The big gear, you'll find either dot up or dot down. I always just put it back the way it was. This one, that's the dot, was down. If you need replacement gears, they're relatively cheap, less than 20 bucks. You just got to know the thickness. They did come in a few different sizes, but most of them are all the same. Now it's time to work on the back half of the pump. Modifications to the back half of the pump include changing the pressure regulator spring, which is in this bore right here. You do it from the other side. And tapping this hole I got the screwdriver in 5/16 18, 5/16 course. You tap it in about 1/4 of an inch. You want your brass set screw you're putting in there to be about even with the end of the hole, but definitely below this surface, so when the pump halves go together, it won't interfere. What you're doing is all explained in the CK Performance Transbrake valve body instructions. when you change the pressure regulator spring, up in the pressure to about 200 psi fixed, you need to restrict the converter charge pressure so you don't end up pushing on your crankshaft and wiping out your thrust. It's all explained right here. Black and white pictures, exactly how to do it. This all comes in the kit. Like I say, I'm not a spokesperson for CK Performance, but their Transbrake valve body kits come with pretty much everything you need. Case saver, thicker intermediate snap ring, lots of good advice. Mom and pop store, Queens, New York. Old school. It's Monday. I haven't received the Transbrake valve body yet. This is my stock, and I stock a bag of these because I do this to all the 400s that I build. I haven't removed the pressure regulator spring and the valves and stuff because some debris can go down that hole when I'm tapping. So I'm going to wait, pull it out, clean the whole thing, and reassemble it all at the same time. You could pull it out before you drill. Doesn't really matter, as long as you clean it before you final install it. The pump casting is soft and it taps easily. I wind in the set screw and drill it in place so I don't have to come up with a way to hold it. The instructions call for 110 to 115 thousandths hole. Your average drill bit assortment, 7/64 would be 106 thousandths. The next step is 1/8 inch at 125. I usually go 125. Internet lore says 1/8 inch is pretty popular, 125. Some even go a little bigger. It's a massive restriction over the original hole. Now I have to remove it and clean everything up and replace the regulator spring. Killing time waiting for the valve body the last couple days. I was working on this 8 3/4 Mopar rear end, welded a couple spring perches on it, ordered some axles, stuck the pig in it, welded up some wheelie bar upper struts for a buddy of mine, and then I'd given up yesterday. It was supposed to be delivered UPS, the valve bodies. At 7:20 in the evening, boom, they showed up. And there was a little confusion. I was assuming I bought the first gear only stat, but I paid for and received the first and second gear stat, which I'm fine with. So they held up the order, waiting for another set of springs, but we got that sorted out. So now I have 2 of everything, and I'm going to continue assembling the transmission. The instructions for the 2 valve bodies are nearly identical. However, I need to drill a hole 1/16 up into the case itself on the, well, they call it the scheduling valve, but it used to be the modulator valve. So I could strip the whole transmission. I don't want to do that, so instead I'm going to go Tom Cruise on it and go inverted and Top Gun reference. And that way all the chips will fall to the floor and won't go inside my transmission. So I'm going to flip it upside down and do that. Let's go over the supplied instructions, 1 page at a time. First page, little introduction, gives you the shift pattern, which is park reverse neutral, low second high, and you do not need to activate the Transbrake to back up. And it works in first and second gear, the Transbrake. And the list of parts it comes with. First thing to do is lower that dam or china wall in the case, located right there. I made the world's smallest brick punch out of a broken punch. I punch the center of it and I drill straight down in. Works really slick. I was using a Dremel tool, but the Dremel tool wants to hit the case. The drill bit, very effective. Just lower it so it's no longer in the way. They give you a dimension like 187. I go pretty generous. Next it says drill a 067 vent hole right above the modulator valve. I use the same 1/16 drill I drilled the direct drum with and ran the hole right up there. Comes out into the case. In the same paragraph it says you must install the scheduling valve with lube and the valve and make sure everything works freely. Check. The next step is to check for the presence of an orifice cup plug installed in the rear servo feed passage. And if it's there, drill it out at least 1/8 of an inch. I did have one, and I drilled it out as big as I could without actually touching the outside of the plug. So it's essentially an open hole. Leave off or do not install the second ring back on the center support. That's done. Drill a bleed hole in the direct drum. Leave the center seal out of the direct drum. The last case modification is to drive in the 3/8 cut plug, in this case in the left side feed hole in the transmission, and it says to be sure it's seated against the center support. Check. I soaked the intermediate clutches, reinstalled them. I use a heavy duty snap ring that they supply with the Transbrake kit. I put the gap over here. I put their version of a case saver through the case and bolted it in place. It's a neat little rig. I put a little sealer on the shoulder part of the bolt, a dab of Loctite on the threads. Done. I remove the clutches from the direct drum so I can install it. Always double check to make sure your bottom steel cannot slip under the lip with just a combination of drum and piston that you're using. It has a bleed hole drilled in it. I have my 34 element sprag installed and it freewheels to the right, locks to the left. I also installed the 16 heavy duty return springs. They came with the Transbrake. I installed the direct clutch first, empty so I could grab it with my hand. When properly installed, it has a nice metallic clunk when you move it up and down, and you can see that it's almost touching the intermediate snap ring. You can get your hand right down there. With the big case savers, you can't see it. You got to go with the sound. With this little case saver, I can actually see that I'm down all the way. Same story with the forward clutch drum. It almost touches the direct drum. When you're down to the last clutch and you hung up, you can see that there's still a gap there. Keep wiggling, it'll go. Working on the back half of the pump now on the pressure regulator. We get everything out of the bore. Be aware that the pin in the back cap, if you're working on it in this position, want to fall out because the hole that you can remove the pin for the cap for the pressure regulator valve is right now facing down and can fall out. Mine seems to be pretty sturdy, so I'm going to leave it. You're going to lose the stock spring spacer, the stock pressure regulator spring, and the two pieces of the boost valve. Their history. Now we have a solid plug, a really sturdy spring, and the stock pressure regulator valve. So this is exactly how it goes in the bore. Reuse the snap ring. The stock pressure regulator spring, and most Transbrake valve body springs, you can almost push in by hand to take the snap ring out. This combination of parts is particularly mean, and the old valve spring compressor works really nice, and the snap ring will fit over here, so you can get it pushed in, snap the snap ring over, put it in your pliers, and put it in. Don't forget to install your converter charge pressure set screw that we drilled out. I line up these holes here, they're going to come together. Flipped over, the holes are still lined up. I leave out the longest pump bolt, put the other 4 in. I pick up the front half, start all the bolts, eyeballing through there to line it up for the first one. Install them finger tight, put on the hose clamp around the parting line, tighten the hose clamp, tighten the bolts. Over at the transmission, I've got my pump alignment studs installed. Nothing but a 5/16 bolt with the head cut off. I got my stock 84 thousandths shim on the back side of the pump. No rings, no O-ring, no gasket. The gasket's like 1.5 thousandths, so you could factor that in if it was that close. But in the past, I've included it, and then I realized it was just easy to measure it and take it into consideration. So now I'm going to set the pump in the transmission just to check the end play. Adjust the shim if I need to, and then assemble for real with the O-ring, gaskets on the bolts, no sealer. Catch you in a few. Ready to put the pump in. Got the gasket aligned on the studs. I always get a kick out of the fact it says 3-speed. 2 scarf cut Teflon rings. Well lubed. Yes, they're different colors, but that's okay. It's what I had. Pump O-ring ready to drop in place. A few final notes before we sign off on the front pump. If you remember, it had O-ring style bolts holding the pump in when I took it apart. A couple reasons I didn't use them. One, they're ugly. Two, I like the looks of this. And most importantly, three, I've had really good luck with the gaskets under the bolts as far as leaking goes. Never had a leak that I'm aware of. Along those same lines, I know in particular, but you can see that the gasket itself has like a rounded side, this side, and a flat side. I install it the way the transmission's sitting. The flat flange part of my bolt is right here, and the round part's against the pump. That's the way I like them. I think this side's going to do more sealing, which is the side I need to seal, compared to this side. Does it really matter in the big picture? No, but it's all in the details. Final detail. For the rest of the transmission, this is all you need. You don't need a torque wrench. You don't need a big ratchet. These threads in both the pan bolts and the pump can't take it. I wish you luck with the torque wrench if you decide you're going to do it. This case is old. The threads were never that good to start with. This much leverage is all you need, and those pump bolts are never going to move. Included in that warning is the valve body bolts. Same threads. All you need is a speed handle. The rear servo assembly. Normally you would leave the rings off the 1-2 accumulator and install the spring they give you, or use a stock spring, depends on the valve body, and replace the seal here. This CK Performance Transbrake valve body, you chuck all that stuff and it runs like that with this giant boing right here. So big boing, new seal, cover, speed handle on the bolts, and a new gasket. Almost forgot. And this can only go in the transmission one way. I transferred my manual valve from my stock valve body. Some valve bodies come with their own valve. This one does not. You reuse the stock one. Make sure it's all clean. It's half empty anyway. No gaskets. No check balls. Just bolted on. Same 5/16 alignment studs installed. I'm going to put the spring for the rooster on last, so I always use this one and any other one. You don't need any governor tubes. There's really nothing to line up. This is your last chance to make sure you didn't hurt the aluminum around the center support bolt. Also make sure it's tight. Make sure you didn't hurt anything when you opened up the dam over here. Don't want any cross leaks. Going together. I love Turbo 400s, and I live in the state of Maine, so I guess I love that too. The separator plate and the valve body looks like the state of Maine. Kind of. And be sure to hit your manual valve in the groove on the way down. Apparently a lot of people miss that step. While not as visually appealing as a billet aluminum Transbrake valve body, one made from a stock cast iron valve body has one thing going for it. All the bolts fit. No fighting. Some of the aluminum ones, being it's the first time they've ever been installed and the tolerances are close but tight, sometimes it's a struggle. This is refreshing. I doubled up the O-rings on the fill tube, lubed it, put it in the case, lubed this end as well. AT545 Allison filter. Nothing but a screen really. You can't see any media in the hole. This is what you want. They call it the race filter. There's a stock one. You can see the yellow media. It's more restrictive. You don't want it. The stock heavy-duty Turbo 400 deep pan, which we're reusing, has a spacer on the filter bolt. The filter bolt itself will almost fall through the hole in the filter. I like to put a washer on either side. It tightens up the whole arrangement. It's not quite as floppy. Less chance of it falling off. Filter installed. Washer on the bottom. Washer on the top. Now it's nice and tight. The factory arrangement flopped all over the place. That's rugged. Dry cork gasket. 2 alignment studs. In previous videos, you watched me make sure all the bolt holes in the pan are flat. On with the speed handle. This won't leak. No silicone. And about a week to the day we started, we're finished. It took a little longer than expected to get all the parts, but in the end, it worked out. I believe I mentioned I bought 2 of the CK Performance valve bodies. I'm going to build another transmission, probably to sell, but I should tell myself it's for the 72 Nova. That way it'll definitely sell. I think I've done 6 of these CK Performance valve bodies, and everybody's called back and said, wow, this thing works awesome. I've yet to experience it myself. I'd like to. So this is first and second gear Transbrake launch. Second gear with a stock 1.48 gear set for second gear. Might be a tall order, but maybe on the street it would work okay. It's a very low dollar option compared to the first gear only start Transbrake. So if you were able to find a use for it, great. If not, it doesn't hurt a thing that it's there. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. I got another one to build right behind it. Probably very similar, so I may not shoot a video for that unless I can find something exciting about it. I do have another motorhome transmission. Problem is I fall in love with every one of them. This one I tried not to get attached to because it's not mine. I still love it. It happens. All right, take it easy. I'll catch you next time.